Okay. Bonjour, ça va? Those are the only two words I know. So everything else will be in English, sorry. My name is Anton. I work for JetBrains. I spent 5 years in Kotlin team by now as a developer advocate. So mostly if you used to be or you happen to be interested in Kotlin and you follow YouTube news, then maybe you have seen my face talking about the new stuff in Kotlin. But I'm now switching more into IntelliJ, still doing Kotlin, and for the part that talks about AI. So AI Assistant, and me also working on some new product that I'm going to talk about today. Just quick hint, Junie is the name of the product. It's a coding agent, it's a plugin for IntelliJ. I will show you that in action a bit later. But I would like to talk about general things of AI, and well, let's start with a quick show of hands. How many of you are using any AI tools in your work? Which ones are you using? Cursor?
I started.
Sorry?
I'm starting with.
You're starting?
Copilot.
Okay. Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, C-Line. Anyone? Either? Those are command line based agentic tools that can generate code for you. So this is like we have to understand the scope of AI tooling as well, because there are different functionalities that are available in those tools, and some of them incorporate everything. Like Cursor is a full-blown IDE with all the features. Now, Copilot is catching up with the latest and greatest. Some tools are just the agentic tools. Some tools are only auto-completion tools. But eventually, you just have to distinguish between the functionality and the goals that you want to achieve with those tools. And we're going to talk about this today as well. Quick introduction. What I see in the community is that there is like a backslash, and depending on what you expect from the tool, to achieve, let's say, if you had 10 years of Java experience and you're very hands-on, you know what you're doing at work, and you try that new shiny tool, execute that once, get, well, subpar results that don't match your expectations, you discard the whole category of tools for good, right? Or you spend a week or two actually trying to get something out of that tool, and finally, at the very end, like maybe in a month, you realize that, oh, I know how it works. You have developed the intuition, how to use those tools and how to get the best out of that. And then you are good, you are productive, and you can, move further. It kind of matches how you learn the first programming language, first IDE, maybe. How many of you are using IntelliJ today? Any Eclipse users? No? Okay. It used to be vice versa. It used to be like Eclipse and then a few IntelliJ and one using Vim, or there's always one. But let's talk about this AI-assisted programming at like the axis, right? So the levels of AI-assisted programming is when you have the least assistance to the most assistance, and at the least part, like when we have the minimal assistance, we have the use case when you know exactly what you want to do and you just want to move faster, and the only thing you need from the tool is to quickly suggest you something, and in the very best case, what it suggests matches your expectations, right? It's very hard to suggest something that is a larger scope, like multiple lines. So at the very best, it could be one line exactly of what you want to do at the very limited context when you're working with that. Let me demonstrate. I have the Spring project, sorry, not Quarkus, but let me zoom in a little bit. Can you see it well? All good? All good? Nice. So just a little demonstration of the completion. So for instance, if we add some lines, can we trigger the completion here? Like that's a big chunk of code because it doesn't have any context yet. If we start typing something like a bean, For instance, we want to add a function and foo, yeah, you see. So it's just a single line, right? We don't have enough context right now, not enough semantical information in the function name or the class name to actually suggest a good completion, like in this place. The best we can come up with is the hello world, based on, I don't know, based on how the model was trained, based on some, like maybe foo is the hint that this is just a demo code and the best that it can do is just return the hello world. And further on, there are some subtle UX additions that you probably need, like accepting partially, like moving, in this case it's a single line, so maybe partially accepting the snippet that was generated. Like this, hello, and maybe I want something else. Will it? Okay, suggested still a world. Anyways, it's just like a single line, and maybe some other examples. Maybe we can do something here. Did it trigger? No, it just doesn't. Because, okay, it does. So these kind of things are very dependent on the latency. Like, and if the latency cannot be very like long, the interval between when you in a state when you are waiting for something to be generated and something to appear should be very short. So it cannot go like a long round trip, because otherwise it will start getting in the way as you are typing, right? So when I first saw the very first feature powered by AI was the Copilot's auto-completion, like 2 years ago maybe. I was hosting the webinars on our YouTube channels with some guests, and they started using it, and more than helping, it was actually getting in the way, because it was generating like 2, 3, 5 lines of code like immediately and constantly on any keystroke. So you're constantly fighting this completion instead of actually writing the code. Not good. So this is a very thin UX problem here to solve. For this, we actually have, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, one question. Will you say how this works behind the scenes?
Yes, sure. I just wanted to get there. So in this specific case, we have a plugin called full line completion, which is working. I have some ID errors popping up because I have a nightly build that I downloaded today morning. But if I go full line, yeah, full line code completion, it's a local plugin that works locally, doesn't go anywhere outside. What it actually does, it inline completion, when I go to the configuration, I will see inline completion. You will see that it's available for Java, Kotlin, some web technologies as well, and Python as well. If you have a Python plugin installed in IntelliJ, or you are using PyCharm, it will have a checkbox here, and it actually will let you to download the model locally. So, like in a separate process, there is a small fine-tuned model based on, I think, Olama, that is providing those completions quickly. Okay, this is where we have the most control. Like, this is a very minimal assistance by the AI tooling, or whatever you call it. If we go back to the slides and look at the next step, sorry, where is that? Yeah, it's here. Let me actually switch those desktops like this. So the next level of assistance is when you get a little more. You know almost exactly what you want to do, but you are fine with waiting and thinking about the problem a little more. And maybe you want more granular, like not smaller assistant, like not smaller completions, but 3, 5, 6 lines of code where you could specify what you actually need or provide more context. And this is a place where you have to realize how the context is provided to the engine, whatever is generating this completion. Or another use case is when you know what you want, but you don't know exactly how. So, for instance, do you know Advent of Code, like running in the end of the year, right? So, great event or let's say activity to learn some new programming language, but you are solving a problem that you actually know how to solve, or you have in the head the algorithm that you develop in the head. You know what you want to do, what if statement to write, what for loop to write, and so on. But if you are trying the new programming language, that might be a problem because you have to look up the syntax or somehow read about it. So I tried it with Swift last year, and I don't know the syntax, but I know something about it. So I know I need to write if statement, and if I write a comment that kind of reveals my intent, then the if statement is kind of generated for me automatically. So I don't spend time on figuring out the syntactical problems. I'm actually working on the problem itself, still without knowing the language completely. So how can we demonstrate that? For instance, let me do something with this. Okay, so for instance, something that doesn't exist in the standard library is when you want to split a list of elements to a list of lists by an example element. So it's almost like a code generation. I know exactly the algorithm or the outcome that I want to achieve, but maybe just implementing is a little bit tedious, and I feel that I don't have this brain power right now to spit out to generate this code from my hands. So in this case, this feels like a pretty standard, I would say, task for the LLMs to be able to generate. But in this case, it works as completion because I provided this context or the intent, what do I want to achieve. And since I'm in a Kotlin file, it knows that it can generate Kotlin function, use some interesting syntax constructs to generate this snippet of code for me. But this snippet is like, you see, it's already pretty big. Like if we even discard those lines just with braces, it will be like 7 lines of code. What if it happens that first half of it is good one, is what I want, and the rest of it is not too good, like not complete, right? So in the beginning, what happened when this kind of completions appeared, people either tried re-triggering this completion somehow, modifying the context text inside before this place, or accepting it and then modifying. Not very productive, right, if you want to move faster. So what we can do here is, again, accept line by line, for instance, right? Or token by token, line by line again, and so on. So it's almost like code generation. And by the way, the snippet wasn't complete, so if I press enter, it generates a few other lines that I actually need. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's a fully generated snippet of code that was actually generated by completion. Right? I didn't run the request to some general purpose LLM for that. But it worked through the cloud right now, not locally. Right, so there is a specific request to the model that is trained specifically only for the completions. That's the model that JetBrains runs on their data center right now. Okay, so we know about completions. We can kind of use completion for code generation, like in this case. What's next? What if we know what we want, almost the same way, but maybe the result or the outcome of our, let's say, task or the prompt, as you can call it, would span a little more than just a function or a body of a function or a statement. Like it might have the impact to the other files maybe, or to the part of the file that are above the function and so on. Maybe it might change even the structure of the file. Or, so there the number of entry points to this scenario is actually increases. There is no one scenario how it can happen. The simplest one could be to use this command as a prompt, like this. As you can see, it turns purple, meaning it has been recognized as a prompt. If I hit the tab key right now, it will start the process of generating the prompt. But maybe we can do something else, like the same action could be invoked explicitly, and then there is like the inline prompt field for that, where I could again enter the same command, and again I would get the same result again, maybe. It's probabilistic, because it might change the style and decide, oh, I want to write it in functional style. But more interesting would be to generate something that, or trigger some workflow that would generate code somewhere else based on what we have here. The most obvious part is generating a test. So for that, we have AI actions and ask it to generate unit test. Let's see. So it's doing the request. It actually collected some context information already, and it starts. Oh, I already had some tests there. So it detected that there is file with tests for this function, so it can just generate some more. Right. So where is that? I have this file here. This one. Discovered, and now I have more tests. Let's see if they pass. They might not pass. Run. If they don't pass, we will not spend time fixing them, but they pass. Anyways, now don't hesitate to ask questions. It can be a conversation. Yeah?
I actually have one. So for sending queries, is there integration with voice input? So instead of typing, can I just instruct?
I wanted to try that. There is this tool that apparently should help with that, like entering, like it's for Mac. I don't remember what was it, and I have seen some people using it, but I haven't tried it myself. So I can answer that. There is one, but I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I thought that there might be some integration with IDEA's accessibility features. What I know, IDEA accessibility is much better than just common voice recognition for programmers. So in theory, maybe I don't even need to write something these days.
Yes, like in theory, you could just talk to the IDE. In practice, I haven't tried that, so I cannot really answer for sure. But there is an accessibility research team at JetBrains, and they're working on this kind of things. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it works and works well. So we have tests. We have generated them for using the generate action. Like you can assess if the test is good or not, by in the scope of your skill set. I don't know, like just reading the code. This is the place where someone might ask, like, if the model generates a lot of code, how do I review that? I don't want to be just a reviewer all the time and just reading the code. My job will be ruined, right? Maybe one day we should just give up those control issues that we have, because we are, as developers, we are control freaks, and we just cannot let it go further. And if we want to review everything and confirm everything, we are not getting productive with this kind of tools. This is the place where we probably have to think, okay, the problem, the model or the tool is good enough, and I'm okay with that to move and generate the code for me without confirming all the time. Now it's like more a social and psychological issue than more than technical. Okay, that's one workflow to generate code, but there might be other workflows that will lead us to a chat. So I didn't open the chat yet, like at once. So if you followed how GitHub Copilot appeared, they first developed the completion models, right? So they got better and so on. And in some time, they created this GitHub Copilot X that was the chat integrated with within the VS Code. And you could just chat with the LLM, ask it to generate some code, and then the code was rendered in this in this chat window. And the impression by the people was like, wow, now AI will replace the programmers, right? But who will carry the code from the chat window to the editor? Still the programmer. So the first idea who made it actually useful and productive was Cursor. They figured out how to, transfer the generated pieces of code into the project, and then the iteration loop became much faster. Now the question is, the generated code, when you transfer it into the project, will it be a quality code? Will it compile? Will the test pass? And so on. Many other things. And you can do more with chat. So this is the transition from the chat, the code generation that we just ask it to generate something and it runs to generate something, to the place where we can chat with our project, discover it somehow, and tell it what to do. So one workflow what I want to show here is the refactoring workflow. Also started from the AI actions. Let me go back to the place where we were here. So also AI actions, and then select suggest refactoring, and then you could pass either just the function or the whole file. Let's do the function, and now the process is running there. Like, it will look at the code. It actually added a few other elements into the context. That we have a call side that is using this function. Like in the tests, for instance, we have some syntactical elements there, members, and so on. And then the model will analyze that, give you the summary what will happen, and then rewrite the code in some way. And then we can actually compare what is going to be changed, right? So it changed the style. We could accept that and rerun our tests and see if it fails, if it's correct or not. So this is like a workflow where we are still in control. So there is no agent between us and the code that is being generated by the LLM.
It didn't just refactor it, it also created some documentation, which is good. And to which extent does it work?
So it depends on the model. Currently it's Claude 3.7, and Claude 3.7 is different in a way that it actually is pretty verbose on the output for the documentation somehow. Like 3.5 wasn't like that, it was just adding some simple comments, and 3.7 I see it actually generates a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did you provide a token for Claude, or it's automatically?
No, it's automatically. Like I have a selector for the model right here. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's 3.5 Haiku actually. Should have been 3.7, but well, anyways, 3.7 is a little better quality. Let's try running the tests. Like if we accept, oh, you see, it's not a quality change. So what's going on here? not enough information to infer, so it didn't provide something. Okay, yeah, so it should have been an T, I guess. And so it's not, it's incomplete, right? Maybe I will not even fix it. So the problem with this kind of workflows is that when we shoot, it's like one-shot workflow. We give a request, the model generates something, but there is no way for it to automatically validate or run the linter, maybe the compiler, and so on. And this is what is leading us to this agentic workflows, where we have like a tool integration with the tool that would check, and if something is not okay, rerun this workflow again and again. So let's replace that back. Last time I tried, it was actually better. Let me see. Maybe that's because the model was different. Yeah, so that was the 3.7 output, and if I apply that, maybe I'm luckier this time. So it compiles, run the tests. So we will check if the tests are actually good enough. Okay, nice. But we are still in this, let's say, last year's workflow. We have auto-completion, we are chatting with the chat. We could add more constraints to our result here and say, I don't know, I want it to be imperative instead of functional, or if the code contains some mutability, then say prefer immutable style, like only use final variables instead of vars, for instance, and so on. And then it will generate a new snippet for you with new constraints, right? And then you apply this code snippet. So it's almost productive in a way that you can kind of have a conversation with the model via the chat, but it's not very productive that you have to do that for very little gain, in fact. So code generation should be just, boom, we get it here and we integrate it into the chat, and then we just iterate over and over. If it matches your work style, then it's good. If it's like, if you have to do larger scale modifications, then it's not very productive. You're going to be spending much more time in the chat than actually writing the code. Not cool, in my opinion. Yeah.
Are these models they learning from your code style?
No. The model cannot learn. The model is immutable. Yeah. The best you can do is when, let's say, if you're a model provider and you have a model and the requests come in, then you collect the data, store it somewhere, and then use this data to train the new version of that model. But the model itself cannot be trained on the fly.
Static,
Yeah. So in this case, what is happening, like the IDE makes a request to the JetBrains data center. The data center says, okay, you have chosen, I don't know, Claude 3.7, and then it goes to the service provider for the task, gets the result, and sends it back to us. We are working on, since it's a nightly build, this is something you will not see in the release version right now. There is this code base mode. Like, let me zoom in a little bit here. That's off by default, and it means that it would not scan the project. Like, and if you figure out that to get a better result from the request, from the same request, you need to provide a little more information to the model. You have two options: either manually start adding those files, which is also not very productive, or you turn it on, and then the chat will use some embedded model to scan the project and find, like, build queries and find whatever is relevant to the query that we are building for the task. All right. And the other development of that is the edit mode is when my request or my task that I want to shoot into the LLM, and I know that, will result in the modifications in multiple places. Let's say if I want to add database support to the project, provide me step-by-step guidelines for adding database support in Spring Boot project means that I will need to add the dependencies into Gradle or Maven. I will need to modify my application properties, probably generate some models, generate repositories, a service in the best practice, and some database specific I don't know, annotations and so on. So it will span across the layers in the application. So in this case, there will be a lot of modifications, a lot of files will be generated, and in this case, the edit mode will actually be able to transfer all the generated code back into the project. This is like just a little improvement, but it's just one shot. And if you have a larger project, a little bit larger project, and this kind of request, it's probabilistic, right? It's not something that you definitely will get like the same answer for the same query. No, the same query might generate different results depending on, I don't know, the position of the stars in the sky. So in this case, still we are responsible for reviewing the code and integrating it back into the project. And it's kind of under your control, but you're gonna spend time. If you want to move faster, you actually need a little bit more sophisticated tools for that. And this is where we get to this maximum, not really maximum, we are still looking at the code because we are still in the IDE. The maximum would probably be some web-based service where you just have like a Google-like query and say sudo make me an app, and it just appears by magic. Here you still like, you have chunks of work, but you can go grab a coffee while the agent is actually generating the code and checking, validating, running tests in iterations. It's just that you are not the agent anymore. You are just a supervisor. So I'm gonna show you that just in a second, but the interesting phenomena here is that the levels of control, like the whole story here, is inversed to the levels of control. So you can get more productive if you don't want to control every other step there. So until some part with the chat, this is where you are forced to be in control, to accept or reject things. But with the agentic workflows, you just have to be the supervisor. Like with the junior developer, hey, do this thing, do that thing, and maybe just review the code that, I don't know, transactional annotation is used in the correct place, the tests are passing, and so on, but you don't read every other line of code. So let me go to that agentic workflow and show you something there. Where's my IDE now? Okay, so the project that I have here is a very simple Spring Boot project, and what it does, it visualizes a geometry algorithm that I have visualized for you. So when you have 2D points, what the algorithm does is it finds the leftmost point and tries to find a convex hull around all those points. This is just a demonstration, you know, just to have some code in the project. So what we could do is to, since I built the project, I know how it works. Let me explain a little bit. So that thing that was visualizing this stuff is implemented with this thing, right? With this code. It's scrambled on purpose so that if you would read it, you wouldn't make sense out of it. Like, it's not a bubble sort, it's not a quick sort, it's just some strange code here. So even if I don't know what it is doing and I'm still not in the agentic workflow, I could actually ask to explain the code, and it will analyze it and it will tell me that, hey, it's actually the geometry algorithm. It's like some variation of it, because there are many variations, and it will explain what is it doing. Nice. So we have some confidence that the LLM actually knows something about it. Nice. But can we do better? Like normally, if you have some project and you start working on it, you either have a task, like some requirement, and the requirement could be, I don't know, remove legacy code and replace with a modern alternative, or find issues and fix them, or review the architecture and, I don't know, propose the improvement plan. So those are the high-level requirements, and what we could do here is put them into some text file, like do this and do that, and I don't know, write tests or improve test code coverage, for instance, and let the agent to generate a development plan for us. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is just, it's like my benchmark for different agents. What I do is like, I try different agents and I give them this project and say, what does, let me zoom in a little bit. What does this project do? Analyze and suggest an improvement plan. Write the plan to docs plan.md file. So it's gonna scan it. It's going to scan the project for a while. It's not a very fast process in case of Junie, but it will tell you first, okay, you requested something from me. This is the way I interpret your query, and I'm going to follow this plan to, you know, fulfill your request. I see you are, like, some people are not seeing it well, but like if you need to be, like if you want to zoom in somewhere, just tell me, right? So it's opening the files, scanning them. Meanwhile, I can just grab coffee and come back. What I ask the team to implement is to have a Telegram bot to send me a message when it's done, but it's not implemented yet. But eventually we'll get somewhere where this plan will be generated, and it will be detailed but not so detailed. And it doesn't use any static analysis tools right now. It just scans the text, tries to make sense out of it, and suggests something. So meanwhile, just ask questions because it will take time and we'll have to watch. If you're curious what's running behind, it's also Claude 3.7. We just don't tell you, and we don't let you to select anything else right now. But mostly when people ask, like, can I select another model? The question is actually, can I select Claude 3.7? And I just told the team, maybe you should just write it there, that 3.7 is running there, and there's no other model available. Yeah, question.
For other functionality, can you use LLM gateways, right?
Sorry?
So, there are multiple services and projects that allow you basically to route your requests depending on the complexity, for example, to local model, to Claude, etc.
Yeah, so we currently have two plugins, right? Yeah. The agent is somewhat isolated right now. It's not really integrated with the rest of the functionality. So it doesn't, you cannot configure a Llama server for that yet, but eventually we will get there. For the AI assistant, you can either install the solution by JetBrains, JetBrains AI, like on your data center with some provided models, or if you have a Llama, you can just, you know, connect to that. It's in the configuration.
So at least for a part, we have a gateway.
Yeah.
Are you hosting the models?
We are hosting only the cloud completion, the multi-line completion model that I showed. That's called Melon, specifically trained for this task, and it has some like fine tunings for the workflows, how we work in IntelliJ. That's why we host it like on our services. For the other things, no, it goes to the service provider.
And you have like a collective subscription, or do I need to have one myself?
Collective subscription?
Like, do I need to have a subscription with Claude?
No. Like we mediate that for you. Okay. So
when will you hit the rate limit or anything?
this is like a good question because it's part of how the plans will be rolled out for this. So they are not announced, so I cannot really tell you exactly how it will happen. I'm pretty sure there will be some free plan with some limits, like how many tokens or credits you can burn, and then you buy some packages. I was asking the team if they are willing to, add the token, like if you would just provide your key and delegate to whatever service provider, but it's not in plans right now. So yes, we generated the plan, the development plan. It scanned the project. It tells what it is, right? It found that there are different implementation of that algorithm that I had. It tells me what are the problems, like you have API inconsistencies. Like for instance, in the code you have a DS endpoint, and in the test file for the HTTP I have coordinates, and so on, right? Like there's some testing, but the REST API is not covered with tests, and so on. So that's a suggestion, like improvement suggestions list, but it's not really a task list. What I can do again is to use the same agent or the same trick here. Instead of typing, let me just copy the prompt from my notes. Where is that? Prompts. So create, I'm gonna read that out for you. No worries. So create a detailed enumerated task lists according to the suggestions improvement plan in the docs plan.md, and the task should have a placeholder, and upon task completion I will mark those tasks. Why is it good? The thing is, everything has its own limitation. Your battery power, your service provider, your internet provider, anything. So if we just do a prompting via the chat, then we need to somehow persist where we are stopped and let you know. And it's not part of the product yet, at least. I don't know. Like the people might have different ways of working with the agents. So this is the workflow I came up with. Just my intuition here. If I have a task list somewhere in a file and I can mark what I have already done, then my task list is persistent, right? And with some probability, the model will follow my guidelines and mark the tasks as completed if I need to. So here's the task list. Not very detailed here, but still. And you see, it actually provided the estimates, like how much time it will spend. So maybe good for the freelancers when they have to charge the clients or give the estimates. Anyways, so now my next step would be how we can actually make it better is, well, this time it was generated, so it told me phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. Maybe I can break my work in chunks. So my intuition here is that even though the adding the tasks doesn't change the sum, right? Logically, it shouldn't be. But when I give it a chunk of work and I have some intermediate state of the progress, then I can review it and adjust the task list up, as opposed to when I'm just feeding the whole task list and let it rail until the end. Maybe it's not going to happen even. Like maybe it will not succeed. So feeding the work in chunks is a better strategy in my opinion. So what we can do here is just tell it, please. Why please? This is soulless machine. It doesn't know anything about pleasing. Implement the phase 1 of the development plan mark tasks upon as done upon completion. So and it's gonna rail and it's gonna do the work, mark the tasks for me, generate some code, and so on. We're not gonna see how it finishes because we are running out of time anyways. But you get the idea, right? Yeah. Question.
Can the bot also interact with JetBrains IDEA, for example, to do a commit, open a pull request, and other kinds of automations?
So what I can do here is to write the guidelines in Junie file called that is guidelines.md file, where I can say oh, just a second, yeah. Here I could say any type of work, any new chunk of work should be done in a new branch, for instance. So this way I would guide the tool how it should be working and how the code should be generated as opposed to what, right? So the what part is in the documents and in the requirements, and how could be done here. Now, this is not the integration part. So if you're asking about the integration, this is where the MCP comes in, like, or any other protocol, like how to integrate with tooling. And this is not integrated in Junie yet. I know it's in the task list, but apparently it's gonna appear very soon in AI Assistant itself. Right. More questions? Okay, as it's generating, like it's doing some work, and we can just quickly check, okay, it's generating something that makes sense, right? And sometimes it's running the tests for me. If the tests pass, that's fine. It just detected the same function that we have generated previously. Well, as it generates code, it might generate more tests. I didn't instruct it to generate tests before, like didn't tell it to do the work in TDD way. But if I did, to generate tests, fail them first, and then generate new code that would satisfy the tests. It just makes the whole process a little, not a little, but 2 times slower, because it needs to, you know, fail, fix, and so on. Okay, so the first part is kind of done, and it actually tells me that the first phase is complete. Let's check if it actually marked the tasks as done for me. It did. It skipped something here, but we can enforce it with the follow-up prompts and so on. So I'm very curious to see how it would perform on a very large code base, because the context window is still the limitation there, and a lot of different techniques are used to fit the information into the LLM still, and like the more follow-up prompts you have, the more probability you also have to run out of the context window. So for this, we actually need the intuition how to use those tools, and just know some facts and limitations of those tools to make them work for us and to become more productive. So what I did, I never had any hobby projects before this, like before this year basically. My GitHub is just like I don't know, a trash of different demo projects. But when Junie appeared, or when actually I started with Windsurf last year, I figured, oh, I can just sit down in the evening and, I don't know, ask it to sudo make me a sandwich and get something really awesome out of it. And what I ended up generating is just a few interesting, I don't know, games first. Let me see. Okay, so that was this. Let's skip that for a second. So I start generating games for the desktop, maybe transfer them after on mobile, like Minesweeper, 2048, Solitaire. And for those, the knowledge of how like what are the rules and what is the logic is available on the internet, right? So meaning that the models were trained on those, and everything I need is to collect this information somehow and present it in a structured way into the agent. And I followed pretty much the same procedure that I did a web search from from ChatGPT, asked it to generate a markdown document, took this markdown document with the requirements and asked Junie to generate a development plan and the task list, and I got those things out. Not from the first iteration, like Solitaire was the hardest one, but Minesweeper, just one iteration basically, 248. I did some adjustments. I wanted to see like an overlay with the button press, like left, right, up, and so on. So those are simple examples, right?
For the Minesweeper, you didn't write a line of code?
No.
What UI framework do you use? Is it KMP or something?
That's KMP, Kotlin multi-platform, so that I could transfer that. So it's for the desktop, but then I could transfer it to the mobile if I want to play my own
Play
game.
Soon?
Sorry?
Google Play soon?
Google?
Are you uploading to Google Play soon?
I hope so. Like I need to find some time when I actually like. The hardest part is to fighting the Gradle plugin there.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, but the project, like if you go to my GitHub, I have marked all the projects that I have generated with Junie, like built with Junie, and I usually don't write any line of code there. So just all experimental. So, but these are the projects where I could write code myself because I know Kotlin, I know Kotlin multi-platform, I know the Compose framework. So this is where I just, accelerated myself. I could do that in 2 hours instead of 2 evenings. But there are some places where I don't have the skill. I know nothing about web programming and like especially front end like React or anything like that. But I play some music at home, and I thought, what could I do today? And why not to develop a web-based tuner? Here it goes. It's like half an hour. Web-based recorder. Take a microphone, record a podcast. I know it took me an hour probably, with some adjustments for visualization so it would look nicer, and a playback. It doesn't have this druggability feature, like to find the place, but it does. And then visualizing MIDI signals. I have a MIDI controller, I could plug it in and just to visualize some music, I don't know, visualize Spectrum or something like that. This is the place where I just don't have the skill. And I was able still to do something functional. It's not like a production project, right? But it's a prototype. Next one was a little bit more complicated. So I first developed a RESTful service with Spring Boot, but I wanted it to follow the domain-driven design practices for building the CRM application, like so that it would have a more sophisticated domain model, controllers, services, and so on, maybe integrations, and then develop a UI. And for the UI, the use case was that I have this project in Spring, look at this project and generate the UI for that. And I want it to be something, I gave it the vague requirements. I need a panel on the left, I need some list of contexts, like what are the screens doing, maybe some visualization and so on. And I tried doing it first with, I think, Cursor or maybe Windsurf, but I ran out of tokens and the application wasn't functional at all, so it didn't build. So I thought, okay, I still have some time left. Why don't I throw this generated pile of code that doesn't work into Junie? And it was able to understand at what part of the development cycle, the previous tool stopped, and develop it till the end. It's not fully functional. Not all the tabs are implemented, but what is implemented is working, the transactions are working. The hardest part was generating the security rules, like because you have a role, administrator, seller, customer, and then configuring the Spring security was a little bit hard there. And the last one was like a funny one. I lift some weights, and counting the lifts is a little bit tedious sometimes, and I thought, why don't I try using some AI for AI? Why don't it detect my pose and then count whatever happens? Like if the rep counts, it just, you know, increments the counter there, and the timer is running. So there is like a neural network inside the browser, specifically estimating the pose position. Like one hand doesn't count, but two hands do count, and this doesn't count, and this counts, and so on. And I actually have a video of that. Let me show you. So I have a playlist of me doing some work. So, and I was fine-tuning the interface while doing the workout as well. You couldn't see it, but it's blinking here. So I thought maybe I can improve that, and gave it some prompts to, you know, adjust the implementation, and tested it further. And then there were some problems with lighting, because it's in my garage, the lighting is not so good. And it actually generated a few options for me to like improve the lighting or choose the different model or different neural network for the estimate. And then it worked. It was fun. It's also on GitHub, so you can find it there. With this, I hope you got something to know today, right? And if you want to try Junie, it's pretty good. Like I was probably the most active user at JetBrains, and my colleagues were asking me like, how do you do all that? If you do all that, you probably know all the features. What are the features? And I'm saying like, there are no features. Like this is all that it has. It has only the input. There is no features. So you have to build the intuition, and you have to experiment. What are the ways how you can influence the output of this thing, and how can you instruct this tool to iterate over the solution or over the problem, and adjust the style of generated code. For instance, if you see it's generating something, you could add into the guidelines, don't do this, but prefer doing something else. I don't know, like if it generated me data classes with mutable fields, maybe I don't want that. Like, don't generate mutable classes, generate immutable classes, and give it the example. So LLMs are pretty good at that. With this, I'm gonna finish and let you rest a little bit before the next talk. And if you have any questions to me, you know where to find me. I'm here or here. And this is my GitHub. If you want to check out the projects, they're fun. I hope you can download them and run them. I usually try to make them runnable. Right. Any questions? I'm happy to answer. No?
You have written this guidelines.md. It's like a standard name, or you?
Yes. For Junie, that's the standard configuration file. So it even helps you, like when you are starting out with it in this state, to actually tell you what the example prompts and so on. I don't like this example prompt, because it tells, hey, generate the guidelines file with the project overview. That doesn't make sense. The guidelines should answer the question how to do something as opposed to what is done. The documentation is in the README file or in the doc folder. This is how you should go about it. And this is misleading. I think this is not the way you should be doing it. Yep.
So you mentioned Gradle plugins. How is it actually going with tool integrations, both for Apache Main and Gradle?
So Junie is pretty good at finding out the context. Like it will scan the project and find the relevant information or relevant files automatically, as opposed to some like previous attempts to implement that where you had to mention something or explicitly put something into the context yourself. This is a Gradle project, but previously pretty much any LLM or any tool, when you ask to, let's say, add database functionality there, it would suggest you to add new dependencies into pom.xml. And it's like, why? Like, what do I do with that? And you had to explicitly tell, I'm using Gradle with Kotlin, or I'm just using Gradle, and then it would probably generate something more meaningful. But here, with this project specifically, when I asked it to generate database support, it was just adding the dependencies into the Gradle file. It wasn't a problem at all. Maybe doing something more complicated, like setting up some plugins, would be interesting challenge, especially if they are new, like Kotlin plugin for the multi-platform. I don't know. I probably have to check. I haven't tried it. Yeah.
I'm not sure either. So basically, right now it just talks to Cloud or to other LLM, so it cannot use, let's say, OpenRewrite. OpenRewrite is basically a framework for refactoring code.
There is no integration for that, but maybe if there is MCP integration, if there was MCP integration, then it would be possible. If OpenRewrite provided the server. Otherwise, because in IntelliJ we have the plugin, maybe at some point we start integrating with the IDE internal functionality, and then it would be able to call the tools from the IDE, even by bypassing the MCP protocol. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yep. All right. We are done?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have priority on the waiting list for Junie or not?
So you are in the waiting list, yeah? When did you sign up?
Today. So.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay, even if I go to marketing and say, please bump him up, you probably will get it by the time of the release. So release is very soon.
Okay.
Yeah, so just wait a little bit, and but I don't know. I have to check. I have to check with marketing. They promised. It's not actually marketing who is promising that, but they promised the release in April.
Okay.
So it's not so painful than waiting for half a year. Yeah.
But
Sorry.
actually not on Windows, right? Only for
It is on Windows now.
Okay.
Yeah, they just updated it like on Monday.
Oh, okay.
And even the emails are not updated yet. So today someone got the invite, and the email it says that
Still Linux.
it's Linux on Mac, but it actually is working on
Okay,
Windows.
right.
Yeah.
It's more for because I'm teaching to students with a more business background, and they are not motivated anymore. Not all, but some are not motivated anymore to learn how to develop. And the question is, what do you think? What will be the required skills to work in this area? Because a few years ago it was, well, we have IntelliSense, things like that, but it was almost mandatory to understand a little bit or copy paste from Stack Overflow. But today, my students they don't have specific model for they copy paste from free ChatGPT stuff, and they don't care. So yeah.
I really suggest reading this article here that Steve Yeager published last week, The Revenge of the Junior Developer. This will probably motivate them to start learning, because you see, it's like, again, this psychological, sociological factor that the models are now generating everything, or the tools can now do stuff for us. But without the intuition, how those tools work, you will not get a good result, and you will not be very productive with them. But for this intuition, you actually have to know the fundamentals. still, like suddenly, and it's a long read. I'm not agreeing with everything that he's saying here. Like for instance, he's saying that the agent fleets are coming this year. It's like, whoa, by the end of the year there will be no like single agents doing the work, but there will be fleets of agents doing the work with supervision agents, and you will be like a meta supervisor for those agents. But there is no any groundwork done for that for this to be appearing at the end of the year. Like maybe technically it's possible, but the result and the cost of it will be like, I don't know, the cost will be very high for a very little gain.
Well, 80% of software development is maintenance, right?
Yes.
So we will have a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work in the coming years. But maybe the summary of all this, what I was talking about, like the prototypes that I have developed were fun to develop. They are 80% functional.
Yeah.
They are 80% functional, but they are good enough for me. Sorry, they are good prototypes that I have developed in one evening. So what is the takeaway from there? Is that these tools today are very good for greenfield projects, for little startups, or for very quick iterations that I need to get something out functional very quickly. And in 2 weeks, when I have new requirements, I will not be maintaining this code. I will throw it away and generate a new prototype with the new requirements. So this is the reality today. I have some friends who are really doing this, but they are in a specific category of business. Right? It's not something that I'm going to take the banking app that has a spec and I just need to add a new functionality. This is where we would like to see Junie to be tried, but there are some limitations with this kind of projects. Yep. Thanks for the discussion, guys.